like, it was so beautiful to have someone say, like, "No, all of the things that you've been experiencing are real.
Yeah.
They're not normal. You're not just a wuss who can't handle menstrual cramps."
Welcome to Cycle Wisdom Chats, where we dive into the world of fertility awareness, hormonal health, and womb wisdom. I'm Mary Aline, certified fertility awareness educator, and I'm super excited to be with my special guest, Tamara Niederman, who is based in Central Florida. She's a fellow fertility awareness educator, full spectrum doula, and community herbalist. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Okay, well, you know the drill. Let's start with a little cycle check in before we delve into the world of endometriosis.
Yeah. Yeah. I am on cycle day 22. I'm like 5 or 6 days past confirming ovulation, but it's my first cycle. Um, my husband and I are in the middle of our fertility treatments. So it's my first cycle. I've taken a break from that because doing a little bit of self-care. My iron's low, my vitamin D is low. So I want to do some nourishing for the next couple of cycles. So I think my body is doing something interesting in response to not having the fertility meds because I think my
Oh,
bleed is coming in the next day or two. And
interesting.
so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
Um, I have been nursing a headache for the last couple of days and I started spotting today. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Wow. That's going to be an interesting cycle share of
Yeah.
like post fertility treatment hormones and
Yeah.
like how that affects our bodies differently. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll have another episode
Absolutely.
where you can share a little bit more about that journey too.
Yeah. I'd love to.
Awesome. I'm on cycle day 4. So I'm spotting. I'm at the tail end of my bleed. So I'll probably spot for the next few days. And I was a sad girl yesterday, and I'm no longer a sad girl today. So
Good.
yeah, lots of tears. I think I cried myself into like dehydration yesterday. So
Oh,
I'm drinking lots of water and yeah, I'm excited to be here with you.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm also
Yeah,
drinking lots of water, but that's
good.
because I don't ever remember to drink it. So I got this for Christmas this year.
So
My
this
husband's like, yeah, my husband's
PSA
like,
to
"How?"
hydrate
Yeah.
yourself.
He's like, "How's 40 ounces of water sound?" Carrying around with me all the time.
Love that. And we'll just like pop some cycle wisdom in
Yeah.
here. Hydrating is great for your cervical fluid production.
Yep.
So, yep, if you are working on that, which I am also working on that, let's take a sip of water together. Cheers. Okay,
Love it. It's the best.
so let's jump in and tell me a little bit about your story with
Yeah.
endometriosis.
Yeah. So, I have stage 4 endometriosis, or I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis this year, I guess last year, 2024. And um, with that journey of like the diagnosis and then excision, I spent a, so much of 2024 trying to like remember when it started for me, when I first started to like understand that something wasn't right or that maybe my bleeds were different than other people's. And I really came to this understanding that I don't know that I have ever had what would be like a normal bleed. Um,
Oh,
I started bleeding, I was 9, and
mhm.
from the time I was like 16 or 17, I can remember like being in debilitating pain. I missed a lot of school. Growing up when I was like in my early 20s, that is when I remember it like really kicking in as like
Mm,
I was recently chatting with somebody who also thinks that she might have endometriosis, and we were talking about, like, laying on the bathroom floor and being in pain and needing the cold tile on, like, on our bodies and being sick and not knowing, like,
Mm,
like, why is this happening to me? And it was around that time where I started to learn fertility awareness, and so I started to, like, I tried to take care of my body in new ways and be more intentional. Um, and I'm 37. I've spent so much of my life in pain that for me, it was just sort of like, this is just sort of my life. This is just
mm,
what it is.
mm,
Um, I learned about what endometriosis was and felt pretty sure that that was what I was moving through, but it's so hard to get a diagnosis right now because it's like, it's essentially like, hey, can we like cut you open so we can look inside of you?
right.
Um, and that never felt like something I wanted to do. It wasn't until the beginning of 2024 when my husband and I decided that like if we're gonna do this fertility treatment thing, it's like sort of now or never. Never.
Yeah.
I knew that getting an official diagnosis and getting endometriosis excision was going to be my best chances of conceiving. That was going to give me my most healthy reproductive, like the most
Yeah.
healthy I could be reproductively. And yeah, so I had my surgery in June where they diagnosed the stage 4 endometriosis and they did my excision. Um, my surgeon told my mother and my husband who were there that her opinion is that I have had endometriosis probably since before menarche, so since before I started my period. um, that she couldn't really explain the kind of dysfunction that she found, uh,
Mm,
which was extremely validating. Uh,
right. Of course.
yeah, my mother was like really upset about the information, obviously, but for me, it felt like such beautiful. Like it was so beautiful to have someone say like, no, all of the things that you've been experiencing are real.
Yeah.
They're not normal. You're not just a wuss who can't handle menstrual cramps, all the things that someone might say to themselves. I had my excision in June of 2024, and I am so grateful to be able to say that I have been pain-free since June of 2024, which is absolutely
Amazing.
wild.
Yeah.
It's so wild. The first few cycles were very confusing, um, but I'm so grateful that I did it, and for whatever amount of time that I get to have pain-free, I'm really grateful for it, and if it helps me to grow a person, that would be pretty cool too.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah.
And you're still on it.
Yeah. And it's wild because, we do this work, right? I've been charting my cycles for 10 or 12 years at this point now, and working with people as their doulas and watching people have their babies, and to working as an herbalist and going through my herbal education and having all of the tools that I had, and
Mhm.
still being somebody who was in pain and was dealing with this like monster of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so that's my story a little bit.
Wow. Wow. So there's so many things that I feel so excited for you, and I feel so like so much gratitude that we have access to Western medical world that is able to we're able to get surgeries for the things that we need.
Yeah.
And I feel this, like, frustration that, like, you had to go through so many years of that without an answer, with, like, probably some very interesting self-talk
Oh, yeah.
around your body and around pain, which you, like, briefly touched on, and, like, how it's, like, also affecting fertility and just that journey. It's just like
It's so upsetting when you if I think too long about how many people are walking this planet, in the kind of pain that I've been living in, and worse, right? Because for me, I don't downplay the experiences that I was having, but for me, I was in pain 2 days out of my cycle, and then,
yeah.
like, recovering on the 3rd day, right? Um, and there are people who are in pain all day, every day, no matter where they are in their cycle. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think we've all heard the stat, like, it takes an average of 8 providers in 10 years to get
Yeah.
an endometriosis diagnosis. And I think
And that's just, like, not okay. Like, it's
no,
not okay.
no,
Especially because there's, like I should find the stat of, like, how many people are impacted by endo. Do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't. I don't, but too many.
Yeah. It's
Um,
more than you would think.
oh, so many more than you would think because a lot of people just think that this is normal.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just think that it's like, "Oh, I just have heavy periods," or, "Oh, I just have," or the self-talk, like, "Oh, I just have this is just normal and I can't hack it," kind of a thing. We don't really know what causes it a ton, there's some research out now that says that it's potentially like an immune system condition, like an immune condition, which I think is pretty interesting. There's some cool research coming out there. Uh,
Mhm.
we don't really know what's causing it, and because of that, there the people just don't know that they're not supposed to be walking around in pain
Right.
like this all the time.
Right. Right, and I think, many of us when we were younger just get the story of, like, your period's supposed to be painful. It's
Yeah.
supposed to hurt.
Mhm.
For people who don't know what endometriosis is,
Sure.
do you have just, like, a brief
So endometriosis is essentially a condition that causes tissue that is very like the endometrial tissue, but it's not endometrial tissue, but it's really closely like that to grow in places where it's not supposed to grow.
Right.
So, um, you can get you can have endometriosis lesions on your bladder or on your colon. The appendix is one of the places where they find it most often, right? Just like,
Hmm.
and they have found endometriosis lesions on every organ of the body. It's a reproductive disease in that it's fed by estrogen, right? Like, depending on
Mhm.
if you have excess estrogen in your body, that can feed endometriosis. It's usually you people usually feel the pain when they're on their periods, right? But it's
Mhm.
not a reproductive disease in that it affects all parts of our body. You can't cure it by like getting a hysterectomy and things like that because so it grows everywhere essentially.
Yeah. And you were mentioning that right now, the only way to diagnose it is through a surgery.
In recent years, there has been some finding, like people can see it sometimes with ultrasound. You can't say to somebody, you don't have endometriosis because we didn't find it on ultrasound.
Right, right.
The only definitive way to diagnose endometriosis is by a laparoscopic surgery. And that is essentially where they make small incisions in the belly to look inside of you. Um, I f There are a lot of people who say like, "Oh, well, I have had perfectly normal MRIs or my ultrasound didn't show anything," but that can't tell you if you don't have endometriosis.
Mhm.
Um, and that like the idea of having surgery to tell me if I have this thing can be pretty off-putting for a lot of people. A, because people don't want to have surgery, and
Right.
B, because it can be really expensive. Um,
Right.
and then lastly, because there aren't a ton of good options on what to do with it once you're in there, right?
Right.
There's these two different kinds of surgery. Ablation, which is where they burn the endometriosis lesion, and excision, when they cut out the endometriosis lesion. Excision is, they say it's like the gold standard of endometriosis care. And it's true, you have less recurrence with excision, but the rate of recurrence is there either
Mhm.
way. And I know for me, when I considered the idea that, like, you're gonna open me up, you're going to cut out the lesions, but they might grow back anyway. That was for a really long time. It was like, so why would I even
Why
do
would
it?
they?
Why
Yeah.
would I do it? You know?
Yeah.
I, a provider told me that de- endometriosis is sort of categorized in stages. You've got stages 1 through 4, and it doesn't matter what stage you're in as far as your pain level is concerned. You can have stage 1 endometriosis and be in debilitating pain. You can have stage 4 endometriosis and your only symptom be infertility or heavy periods or something like that, right? Um, but what they said to me was, if you have stage 1 or 2 endometriosis, excision, the data shows that excision isn't all that helpful for fertility purposes, but if you have stage 3 or 4 endometriosis, excision doubles your chance of being able to conceive.
Right,
So,
which is huge.
yeah.
It can
So
be
that for
huge.
me was like, okay, and then I'll have this surgery, which is just like a whole other conversation, because like, it would why isn't it enough for me to just want to not be in pain, you know? Which is
Right.
like another conversation altogether. Altogether. Recovery for me took probably 6 to 8 weeks, and like I said, I have had no pain since then, so that's been pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah. Very, very amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was your main, like, suspicion around endometriosis the pain that you were feeling in your cycle, or were there other signs and symptoms for you? Do
Yeah.
people have other signs and symptoms?
Yes. My main issue for me personally was just like really debilitating menstrual pain. I also had very, very heavy bleeds.
Okay.
So, the kind where like like would put Chuck's pads down on seats before like I sat down just in case, you know. I also had a lot of digestive discomfort. I also had like shooting pain in my thighs, which I still am not really sure how I understand how it all comes together. It's probably ligaments and nerves and all of
Mhm.
this stuff, but leg pain is a pretty common experience that most people don't know is related to endometriosis. I also had pain with intercourse and pain with orgasm. That is pretty inconvenient. um,
Uh,
Whether or not I was menstruating, that was just sort of like something that came all the time. There's so much that can come with endometriosis.
it affects, like, all
Yeah.
areas and aspects. Did you see anything in your chart in particular?
Um,
Like
Outside of charting things like my super heavy period, heavy
mhm,
clotting, I also could see that I was experience a lot of estrogen dominance,
okay,
which is that caused by the endometriosis, or is it feeding the endometriosis? Like, which part of this came first, you know?
right.
But you often can see lots of cervical fluid, really long follicular phases, things like that, signs of estrogen dominance alongside somebody who's dealing with endometriosis. My endometriosis surgeon, he mentioned to me once that endometriosis impacts the health of the eggs in your follicles. And
Okay.
so I have very low AMH, which is like essentially the hormone that uh, tells you how much egg life you have left.
Mhm.
And like that's not the great way to put it, but it's like the best way that it comes to me. I have a very low AMH for my age range. I have, this luteal phase deficiency that comes from that. And
Mhm.
my provider mentioned that he sees that hand in hand with long-term endometriosis.
Okay. Wow, those are some like really tangible
Yeah.
things that people can look for and understand if they're charting their cycle. What are some ways that people can support their emotional well-being while they're managing this condition?
This is a hard question because you kind of have to like remind yourself that you are more than just what you produce. I think being kind to yourself,
Mm,
understanding that like your pain and your experience is like deserving of attention, right? It's our
mm,
body like giving us information.
mhm,
Um, she's saying to me like, "Hey, you need to just stop for right now. Just
mhm,
rest." I did what I could to manage my experience. I work so closely with beautiful practitioners of all different kinds of modalities, right? Acupuncture, pelvic floor physical therapist, or Vigo massage therapist. And so I did what I could throughout my cycle to care for myself. And sometimes, for me especially, like the right thing was for me to like take a cannabis gummy and just sleep for 2 days. Or if
mm,
I needed to be on for whatever reason, like, well, then I have to take this big pharmaceutical that's going to relieve my pain, but allow me to be a functioning person. For me in my life, that was a really hard choice for me, to be able to say like, yes, I have all of these like beautiful things at my disposal and all of these beautiful modalities of people who want to help me, and all of these like really special natural ways that I could care for my body. And as much as my Arvigo massage therapist is like the most incredible person, and I always feel like I'm coming back into my body after I get off of her table, she can't unstick these parts of my body that have been stuck together for so long. And so
right.
for me, being able to say, part of holistic care is inviting pharmaceuticals and allopathic care into my life as the best way to care for my body. That was a difficult acceptance for me once I had like come into the world of herbs and like started this part of my life, and being able to say like, "Hey, I am very grateful for this pharmaceutical intervention that is going to make it so that I can live my life for the next 2 days."
Mhm,
To care for myself holistically means inviting some of these allopathic modalities into my life.
mhm. Yeah, you speak in such a about like it's just finding the balance for each individual. And I
Yeah,
think the wellness industry can get very stuck in like, this is the way, but we have to be open to like the ways that are going to be most serving to
yeah,
the person whose body it is. So
yeah,
like you get to decide what you're going to do with your body and finding the pieces of the puzzle that are going to allow you to have the highest quality of life. And that's
yeah,
what's the most important,
yeah.
right?
And having the information and education to make those decisions. Hormonal birth control is not going to cure anybody's endometriosis. It's not going to. But it it will for sure stop your hormonal cycle, which could stop your pain. So, how do I hold that with like you're not curing your endometriosis and you're causing a lot of other issues potentially in the long run, and it is actually stopping people's pain? How do we hold that? Well, with education, with
Right.
like, "Hey, this is what your provider is presenting to you. this is the education you need to decide if this is the right choice for you.
Right.
A hysterectomy doesn't cure endometriosis because we know endometriosis is a full body disease.
Mhm.
And for some people, it could still be the right choice if they have other dysfunction that comes alongside the endometriosis, right?
Right.
But we have
Right.
to have an understanding of like what are the long-term impacts of these things that we're choosing.
Mhm. Yeah. I was just with another friend who also has endometriosis, and that is what they could offer her. And she is on just in the beginning stages of her journey and um, is, trying to welcome in additional practices into her life that are going to nourish her body in other ways. And she's going to take the hormonal birth control for now until she can
Right.
come up with a plan,
Yeah.
which I think, again, valid
Mhm.
and your choice. But,
Yeah.
and also know, like you said, it's not going to fix the endometriosis.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even alongside surgery, like there is no cure for
Hmm.
endometriosis.
Hmm.
Not only is hormonal birth control not a cure, not only is getting a hysterectomy not a cure, but this gold standard surgery that I got that I'm so grateful for is not a cure until society starts to put women's care as a priority, right? Until the medical model starts to care about how our bodies are feeling, then I'm not sure when there will be a cure.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who got a diagnosis of endo?
This really sucks. Like, that's, like, the first thing that comes to me is, like, this I'm so sorry that your body is moving through this. I would also say that I really believe that our bodies are good, and it
Mm-hmm.
can feel a lot, especially moving through this disease, like your body is your enemy. Your body is working really hard all the time to
Mm-hmm.
to do just like its basic functioning. And so to have grace for her and to have grace for your emotional self and encourage you to not stop in just like pain is just my normal, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to live that way. You don't have to live in pain and walk away from any provider that says that this is just like the way that your body's supposed to be.
Such raw, authentic care.
Yeah.
Love you so much. Thanks for showing up for
Yeah.
yourself and thanks for showing up for this. Well, thank you so much. We'll put all of your socials into the show notes and thank you so much for sharing your story. It's I just love your perspective on how you hold both end so gracefully and so beautifully and so authentically raw. Like I love that about you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You. Thank you so much
And
for having me.
absolutely. All right. Bye everyone.